It was great because Greta had just turned 5 in May, and I think swim season started probably June, the month after. And Sarah took a great picture of Greta on the block in her first race, and she looks like she's about 2 feet tall, and she has a pink camouflage swim cap on, and she is ready to go and dive in the water. And because of her older siblings, older sister and an older brother, were both swimmers, that was the family sport as far as Greta knew.
We always said about Greta, she liked to run with the big dogs. Like if the big kids were doing it, she wanted to do it too.
When I was probably like 9 and 10, I started swimming with the teenagers, the oldest group, and then I got to swim with both of my siblings and train with the older kids, and I always just loved that, pushing myself to try to be better than the older kids, to try and be faster than my siblings, and I just always really loved the sport.
It was an interesting process. On the day that the colleges were allowed to reach out to juniors for swimming and for recruiting, she got over 48 contacts.
And for me, the second that Michigan called, that was it. I had always dreamed of going to Michigan. Ever since I was 5 years old, I was telling my whole family and all my friends, when I grow up, I'm gonna swim at Michigan. And as soon as they showed any interest, they didn't really have to say anything or convince me at all, I was there.
The whole recruiting process is overwhelming, and I don't think it matters what level you're at, whether it's D1, D2, or D3, but it is overwhelming for kids. I think, there's a lot for them to consider, and it is easy to get swayed by sort of, the bells and whistles of some places without necessarily considering, is this really the right place for me?
Part of me always thought like I would never be good enough to go there, and that was internalized within me. So when I started actually, this was gonna be real, I was actually gonna be going there, I still partially believed that I wasn't good enough. And in D1 athletics, you cannot have any ounce of doubt in yourself. You have to fully believe that you can do it, and I just wasn't at that place mentally. So I started at Michigan. It was a little bit rough to begin with. I was going to school, going to swim, going home, going to bed by 7 p.m. every night, just trying to make it through. And that wasn't what a lot of my teammates were doing, so I was having a hard time connecting with people and making friends. And then I also started really struggling with my health.
They sent her for a stress test. They sent her for an MRI, trying to get sort of to the bottom of a lot of her symptoms. But there were days she couldn't finish practice. She would get out of the pool and lay on the pool deck. And honestly, the coaching staff did not handle it very well. I think they very quickly then just sort of dismissed her, like, okay, this kid's not gonna work out for us, and just kind of kicked her to the curb.
I had gone to a practice, an afternoon practice, and passed out. And after I have these passing out episodes, there's almost like a hangover from it, if you will. My mind is really foggy for usually 24 to 72 hours afterwards. I'm physically just not as strong, and I really don't know what's going on. The next day, after this practice where I passed out, I had a really big exam. So I had contacted my coaches, my trainer, and our team captains and said, this is what's happening. I don't feel like I am healthy enough to come to practice tomorrow. So the next day after my exam, I go to practice, and my coach calls me into his office, and he just kind of sits me down and says, you making decisions for yourself is selfish and self-centered, and you have no right to try and take care of yourself. He was telling me that I was the worst athlete on the team, and that I should be grateful that he even spoke to me, that I don't deserve to have these rights to make decisions for myself or prioritize my health. And I left that meeting. I remember I called my high school coach, who was my best friend in the whole world, and I just said, I can't do this anymore.
Basically since the age of, and I can't remember if it was 6 or 7, where she started to really shine, she was the it swimming girl. She really was. That's who she was. She was always the fastest. And if she wasn't, Next year she was going to be the fastest in whatever event it was. So to see her hit that as still a teenager, it was very sobering. And then you realized, then Mom and I talked a lot at home that, well, neither one of us really believed that if she wasn't swimming, Michigan was the right school for her.
And then my sister went to Hope, and I had former teammates who were on the team here, and so I kind of knew what their experiences were like. I really wanted to have, wherever I ended up, to know at least one person on the team who could testify to their experience at that school.
The most difficult thing was the frustration in not being able to get a diagnosis for a long time. And that entire time, a lot of people, there's this insinuation that there's nothing really wrong with you. It's all in your head, or it's anxiety, or it's somehow your fault. And so that has been the biggest relief, is finally getting that sort of stamp of approval from the Mayo Clinic saying, no, you actually do have this thing. That just relieves, I think, for her, a lot of the stress about having this chronic illness.
So POTS is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And basically it means that when your body changes position, your blood doesn't flow properly. It's not really good at fixing itself. So if your blood is like filled up to here and then you tilt your body, then it gets all wonky and it doesn't really know how to circulate all the way through your body. I also am hypovolemic, which means I don't have enough blood volume to begin with. So I don't have enough, and it's not really good at circulating itself. And so when that happens, I get really dizzy. I start to lose my eyesight. I start to lose my hearing, and a lot of times I'll pass out.
She was a little bit of a broken toy, if I'm being honest. She, came with, all the accolades and the lifetime best times and, the name recognition, so to speak. And so much of that first year was, what do we have here? We know we have an unbelievably talented swimmer, but where are we going to go with this? And what pieces are we picking up, and what are we putting back together? And throughout the course of her first year here, a lot of it was, hey, how do we get you to love the sport? And how do we create an opportunity for you to have a positive association that you and every one of your teammates deserves?
My first year here was very rough, and people sometimes get mad when I say that because I set MIAA records, won events at MIAAs, got second at nationals, but it was a really rough year. Swimming, you spend so much time in your own head. You're underwater for so long, and all you really have is yourself and your own thoughts. And I would convince myself that when I touched the wall, my old coaches were going to be there, and they were going to ridicule me and yell at me, and I would freak myself out and work myself up so much that I would just be in a state of panic.
But I could tell she was going through some struggles, like off to the side with our coach, and just kind of going through some things, and I didn't really understand it. Again, we weren't that close, but as I got to know her better, I understood more deeply what was going on with her and just how much of a struggle the last year or two had been for her, and kind of why she showed up in the ways that she did.
Over Christmas break, my first year here, Tabor and I went to breakfast, and he said, just tell me everything. Tell me everything that happened. How can I be helpful? What should I try to avoid? And I just basically got to sit down and tell him my whole story and what is helpful to me, what I need as an athlete, like what things would be hurtful to me. And the fact that he took the time to sit down and share a meal with me and talk about those things really showed me that he cared and built trust, and that helped me to be able to kind of trust in the fact that I'm going to touch the wall and there's only going to be supportive people standing up there.
As we've learned more about Greta and gotten a little bit more of a handle on what some of her triggers are from past negative experience or past health issue, we've tried to do a really good job of listening and just really taking what we're hearing, encouraging her to listen to her body, where she's at, the things that we need to do, and just asking some more questions hey, how do you feel about this? I think we're going to approach this set this way. Here's your event lineup for today, or this weekend, and this is how we want to navigate it. She spent 2 separate full weeks at the Mayo Clinic this year, in the middle of our season, which certainly presents some challenges for us. And, I think we're coming out on the other end stronger because she's got a stronger sense of self, and I think we know how, to support her the right way for her to be the best version of herself.
She told me that she met God in Zambia.
Yeah.
And she loved it so much. She really grew. She developed some really close relationships. She actually went back to Zambia with the organization, not on the sea trip, but with the third-party organization the following year for a few weeks. And I think it really just brought her a lot of peace, made her realize sort of her place in the world, gave her a bigger perspective. And yeah, it was life-changing.
A boy named David came up to me, and I had never met him before, and he said, God is putting words on my heart for you. And he read Isaiah 43 over me and just said, like, you are mine and I love you. And those are the words that God speaks over me. And he said, you are a light and darkness cannot touch light. And the darkness tried to touch you, but it can't because you are a light. And I just broke down sobbing because I felt like God was telling me, like, I'm here for you, and I see you, and these are the things that I think about you. This is who you are in me. You are a light, and you are mine, and I do love you. And I really took those identities back with me and the power of God speaking over me. And what does God say about me? Who does God say that I am?
Just being able to push through all of these struggles in her life is extremely courageous. Getting over and being able to push through the traumatic experiences that she had in her freshman year, swimming D1, I think is extremely courageous. I think a lot of people would just stop swimming, be done with collegiate athletics as a whole, but I think it's very courageous of her to push forward and see it through.
She's a woman of faith, and she's got some great people in her corner and surrounding her, and I think there are places that she knows that are safe for her. And in the process of those safe places, she's been able to navigate a little bit more, and continue to have the courage to do the right thing regardless of the circumstance or the obstacle that comes with doing the right thing. And I think she's doing a really good job of that today.
Parents obviously are proud of their children, but when you see someone struggle that much, but just continue to do it and continue to go after their goals, that's what sets you up in life. There's always going to be roadblocks, but to see her just continue to push through one after the other, to me, it's unbelievable how proud you are of your child.
One of the biggest things that happened where like God really worked in me and changed my outlook, I actually got the chance to speak at mental health. Be Better is like a mental health foundation in Holland, and they have a fundraising gala, and I got to speak at it and tell my story. And the coach who had put me through all of this was there, and so I got to tell this story in front of him. And then when I got back from Zambia, I got to pray over him and over his life, and God really had spoken to me and said, like, he's a person and I love him just as much as I love you. And I did a lot of work of every night I would pray and I'd say, God, help me forgive these people. I don't want to be burdened by this anger anymore. Just help me forgive them. I'm going to keep saying that I forgive them, and I need you to supply me with the feeling. And he really worked through that to help me feel like I'm not mad at them anymore. They're doing their best. They're people. They're loved by God just like I am. And so that really helped me to kind of get over the anger and the sadness that came with Michigan swimming. That kind of carried me through the whole next year. My whole junior year, I think I really focused on, like, this is a blessing, and being here is a blessing. And there's so many good things that have come from me going to Michigan and then transferring here. And I really noticed that when I start to get sad or down on myself about like what had happened, to make a list of all of the things that I would have to give up to go back. And I'd have to give up my teammates and my friends and the education that I'm getting here that's amazing, and all the great people that I've met and experiences I've had, and it would never in a million years be worth it. And so I've been able to really focus on those things and just be so grateful and happy to be here.